Welcome to a special mailbag edition of Falcons Today. I'm here to answer your questions from our live show, which airs every Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern. Let's dive right in. Our first question comes from Lav S. He asks, if Atlanta wants to trade down, which team might realistically want to move up to 15? Great question, Lav. Two teams immediately come to mind, the Denver Broncos and the Los Angeles Chargers. The Broncos hold the 20th pick, and I see them as a strong candidate for a trade-up for a couple of reasons. First, head coach Sean Payton has a history of moving up and down in the draft during his time in New Orleans, so there's a precedent there. Second, they need help at running back. If they believe that a player like Omari Hampton, who is considered the RB2 by many, won't make it to 20, they might want to jump ahead. Now let's talk about the Chargers. I think they would love to snag Colston Loveland, Jim Harbaugh's former tight end from Michigan. However, if they get nervous that the Broncos at 20 might also be eyeing a tight end, they could leapfrog their division rival to secure Loveland for Justin Herbert. So those are two teams I'd keep an eye on, Lav. Moving on to our next question. Should the Falcons go for the best player available or focus on positional needs at pick 15? In my opinion, it's crucial to find a balance. The idea of picking the best player available, BPA, is popular and exciting, but it can be tricky. For example, if a running back like Ashton Gent is the best player on the board, do you really want to go that route? Probably not. So, while BPA is important, you need to consider the team's needs. This is a classic situation where you'll hear someone in a meeting say, "It's all about finding a balance." For the Falcons, I'd say BPA is the way to go, but you have to eliminate certain positions from consideration, like quarterback, running back, and possibly offensive tackle, unless you have concerns about Caleb McGarry. Ultimately, I believe the need will dictate the decision. Terry Fontenot, the Falcons' general manager, will feel the pressure to play it safe. He might opt for the infield single approach, just get on base. The Falcons need an edge rusher, and there are plenty of good ones in this draft class. So don't overthink it. Stick to the basics and make the smart choice. It's draft day, and the Falcons have some important decisions to make. They need an edge rusher, and there are solid options available. I believe this should be a straightforward draft for Atlanta. They're not a team that should be making flashy trades or surprise picks. Just grab that edge rusher. It's like a buffet. Take what you need and don't hesitate to go back for more in the second or fourth rounds. Just fill your plate. Now, let's talk about a three-team trade idea. The Falcons acquire Trey Hendrickson, the Giants get Kirk Cousins, and the Bengals receive the Giants' third-round pick along with the Falcons' fifth-round pick. This could be a great trade for Atlanta, but I'm not so sure it's a win for the Bengals. They'd be getting a third and a fifth-round pick for a player who had back-to-back seasons with 17.5 sacks. That's valuable, but they'd likely want more in return. It would need to be something closer to a first-round pick to make it worthwhile. As for the Giants getting Kirk Cousins, I think they might actually be eyeing Russell Wilson. I believe Aaron Rodgers is leaning toward the Pittsburgh Steelers, while Wilson could end up with the Giants. Still, it's fun to explore these three-team trade scenarios. Now, let's address a question from Josh Martinez. Is the Micah Parsons trade rumor legit? The short answer is no. If you're thinking about a traditional trade rumor, I wouldn't want to give that impression. It's possible the Falcons have reached out to the Cowboys about Micah, but I can't confirm that. What Josh might be referring to is a video he posted about Parsons potentially being a trade target for Atlanta. There's a connection here. Parsons wants to be the highest-paid non-quarterback in the NFL. If the Cowboys aren't willing to meet that demand, the Falcons should definitely be aggressive in pursuing a trade. The Cowboys could avoid paying him and, in return, receive a significant haul of draft picks. Meanwhile, the Falcons would get a proven edge rusher, which is exactly what they need. Before we move on to the next questions, it's been a while since we've tackled these trade ideas, and it's always exciting to explore the possibilities. With all the new subscribers we've gained during the month of free agency, I want to hear from you. Shout out your city in the chat and let me know where you're tuning in from. I love seeing how far and wide the NFL fan base stretches. Let's find out who the furthest fan is from Mercedes-Benz Stadium and who's the closest. Now let's dive into a question from Boomsticks. What do you think about drafting Mike Green in the first round and Maxwell Harrison in the second? For those who may not know, Mike Green is the edge rusher from Marshall, and Maxwell Harrison is the cornerback from Kentucky. I don't dislike this idea at all. Mike Green had impressive production last year, but there were some size concerns. He came in a bit smaller than I expected, which might mean he'll need to transition to an outside linebacker in a 3-4 defense. Let me do a quick check on his combine measurements. It looks like he measured in at 6 feet 3 inches and 251 pounds, which is a bit bigger than I thought. So, I'll take that back. While it's not my favorite pairing, I can definitely get on board with this idea. Next up, we have Quincy McBride asking, who would you be shocked to see Atlanta take at 15? It's true that the Falcons surprised everyone when they took Penix last year. Can we really put anything past them? Quarterbacks are a unique case. If you love one, you take him because they're so valuable. But if you love a running back, you might pass since you already have Bijan Robinson. In the spirit of your question, I'd say a real shock-the-world pick would be a wide receiver. With Drake London and Darnell Mooney already on the roster, no one expects them to go for another receiver. However, if they were to walk away from the draft with a receiver like Ted McMillan, Emeka Egbuka, or Matthew Golden, that would definitely raise some eyebrows, especially since they focused on defense at the combine and didn't bring any offensive players. Finally, Chris asks, do you think there's a chance the Falcons draft a center over a defensive end, outside linebacker, or cornerback with their first pick? The answer is no. There's no chance of that happening. There won't be a center going in the top 50 picks this year, and it's not a strong year for teams looking for a center. While there are some good offensive line prospects, I don't see Atlanta going that route with their first selection. Overall, the center position is not one of the strengths of this draft class. This is evident from the number of offensive tackle signings we've seen in free agency. Take Dan Moore, for example. He was the Steelers' left tackle last year and just landed a big contract with the Tennessee Titans. Among the 32 healthy starting left tackles in the league, he was likely ranked between 30 and 32, yet the Titans gave him around $80 million. That tells you a lot about how teams view the tackle prospects in this draft class. And the Titans aren't the only team making questionable overpays. The Chiefs did something similar by signing a guard from the 49ers to move him to tackle, and the Giants paid a backup tackle $11 million. All of this points to the fact that it's not a great time to need a center, so I don't expect the Falcons to prioritize that position early in the draft. Now, let's address a question from ZD Productions. Could we see a new kicker next year because Younghoe Koo is coming off a rough season and Riley Patterson struggled? The short answer is yes, it's possible. And no, I won't forget the Koo incident. You never forget the first time something like that happens live on a show. I could see the Falcons bringing in an undrafted free agent kicker after the draft. They might want to have someone work out with the team, and if Koo runs into issues in September or October, they'll have a head start on finding a replacement. They could say, well, we worked with this guy over the summer, so let's bring him back since he already knows our system. That's as close as I think Atlanta will get to making a change at kicker for now. Evan asks, should Atlanta get a pass rusher in free agency and then draft Will Johnson or Starks, while also picking up another pass rusher later in the draft? I really like this idea, especially the part about Will Johnson. Imagine pairing him with Leonard Floyd. In the first round, you could grab Johnson, and then in the second round, you could look at players like Jack Sawyer or Landon Jackson from Boston College. There are some solid edge rushers available in the second round. Now, I know this might not be a fan-favorite idea. Casual fans might say, we were 31st in sacks last year, and we took a cornerback? And honestly, I wouldn't blame them for thinking that. But once they see how good of a player Will Johnson can be, I think they'll come around to the idea. Thanks for the question, Evan. I really appreciate it. Next up, Boyd asks, any more news on Trayvon Walker being available? The short answer is no. I believe that was just an internet rumor. Sometimes these rumors can turn into reality, but this one seems far-fetched. For example, someone on Twitter predicted the West Virginia coach would go to Indiana a week before it happened, and that turned out to be true. But college football is a different world than the NFL. This all ties back to a rumor from Walter Football suggesting that Walker could be available for trade. I wouldn't consider Walter Football a reliable source when it comes to inside information from Jacksonville about the first overall pick being on the trading block. That said, I wouldn't be shocked if the new ambitious GM in Jacksonville thinks he can outsmart everyone and decides to trade Walker for a bunch of picks. He might believe he can build a better team with more draft capital rather than relying on one player who hasn't quite lived up to the expectations of being the first overall pick. However, Walker has still quietly performed well, recording 10 or more sacks in 2 straight seasons. So, I'd give this trade rumor a very low chance of happening, but I won't say it's impossible. Now let's wrap things up with a shout out to Patrick, who says, "Falcons over everything." I love that enthusiastic mentality to end our mailbag. Thank you for the statement, Patrick. Everyone, let's show Patrick some love in the chat for his support. Thank you all so much for tuning in today. That will do it for our mailbag session. We'll see everyone later with more Falcons news and rumors.